Going to call this meeting to order. Please join us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Please note for the record that all council members and district board members are present.
Okay. That brings us to adoption of the agenda. Any changes, deletions, or otherwise? A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, City Attorney, do we need to report out on Monday night's closed session?
We certainly can. The Housing Authority met in closed session to discuss real property negotiations, and direction was given to your real property negotiator. And with respect to the other matter, there was no specific action taken by the council concerning that matter.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody hear okay? Okay, maybe it's me. Can't hear what I'm saying.
It's not. Doesn't look like it's on.
I know it's on. Yeah, they can hear me. Okay, so that brings us to oral communications number 1. I have a number of slips here. This is for any item that is not on the agenda. That please give a slip to our city clerk. So first one up I have is Mia Christie.
Thank you, council members. So I wasn't here last Thursday, but I've been informed there is going to be a ballot in November about.
Can you bring the mic close up? Thanks.
About potentially changing the general plan for the Baylands development. And so I just think that before that vote, the community should be really well informed. And so some ways we could make sure that everyone has all the information is a study about potential educational opportunities or school district scenarios on the Baylands, so that in order for the town to really reap the benefits of tax revenue on the Baylands, we would have, my understanding is we'd have to redraw the school district lines. And so, because right now the Baylands is in the Bayshore School District, so I just anticipate there's going to be a lot of questions about that in the community, and so in order to answer them, I would like, a study to be done so that all the information is presented to the town. And I'm looking forward to having some clear guidance on that process. And I do think some of the questions that come up would be like, what would be the boundaries of the district? How would tax dollars be allocated to schools, just as to start? And I saw on the agenda the workshop about the community being able to shape any potential development that could happen out there. So I'm really excited to hearing about that tonight. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you. James Christie.
Mayor Conway, council members, city staff, thank you again for everything you do for our city. I'm bringing the same issue that my wife just brought forward to each of you. I know there was a study being done on the school district boundary lines, particularly how they would pertain to the Baylands. And my request is that the council moves forward with the study. I'd prefer it be done in a timely manner, particularly so that we could have the study done before the general plan amendment election in November. A lot of really important issues that would be a part of what the school district would be out in the Baylands. As you all know, it's currently in the Bayshore School District, and we should really consider how we can best benefit all the children in Brisbane, the children now and the future children of Brisbane, and how could we benefit them the most with how the school district boundary lines are drawn throughout our whole city, particularly on the Baylands. A lot of tax revenue is most likely going to be generated on the Baylands. A lot of tax revenue that will be benefiting any future school that would be built out there. Future school has to be built out there with the population increase that will most likely happen as a result of development. So again, if you can move forward with the study, I would deeply appreciate it. My wife would deeply appreciate it. Our future children would deeply appreciate it. Thank you again very much for everything you do for our town and for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, James. Nancy Loxamana.
Nancy Loxamana, resident, Brisbane. Honorable Mayor Conway and council members, I too would like to see you continue with the school district study. I do have a letter of my comments. Thank you so much again for your leadership and service during these difficult times. We really do appreciate the here on a local level, transparency, and a real listening to everyone in the community. You all represent that. Thank you. I'm here also to ask to consider going forward with the school district study, which will evaluate various scenarios on the Baylands property. We need a team of independent school experts to give us more concrete information and data to provide the best possible option for that school in the Baylands. Someone mentioned at a meeting recently, what do you think the Baylands people want in their community? We know as a town that we care about our safety, our community values for adults and children. They will want that as well. But the Baylands will also be where a new school is needed, and the Bayland residents will want us to do the due diligence in knowing the answers before they ask the question, what will be my child's school? What is the next school? Can we do this? Can we do that? And the inevitable, why not? A study with data will create an open conversation with the stakeholders, clarity and transparency to the superintendents, the school board members, the teachers, the current families, and of course our community. This study will answer the questions of what we could possibly do and what we can't do. We can then be proactive on what the next steps could be. We're not asking you to take a stand. We're just asking you to do the study. The end goal should always be what will be best for the education of the children in the Baylands. Schools are integral connection within healthy communities. Let's find out what those options are. I hope you agree to move forward with the school study, and thank you as always for your consideration and time.
Thank you, Nancy. Lori Lou, former mayor.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. So I was remembering from last year, I think it was maybe April, when at the time we considered the school merger study, and I also just would like to see the city continuing to move forward with this. As a parent, I'm looking forward to when my children go to high school, and I would like to know whether we can explore options for having a high school closer to or in Brisbane, because I know that bus situation is not tenable, and it's not ideal to have our kids traveling 3 hours a day by bus to get to high school. And so I would just like to support the idea of having this study move forward. I know it stalled a little bit in the past because of some school board or superintendent comments, and I really think it's incumbent on the city with the upcoming ballot measure in November to make sure that we really get a handle on this and get a good assessment before this goes to the voters to see what would be the impact of putting housing out on the Baylands with respect to educational opportunities and how that might impact the school districts and the city as well. So I'd encourage the city to move forward with that in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Karen Lentz. Welcome home.
Since I've been here, it's good to be back in town. Karen Lentz, Humboldt Road. Good evening, you all. I just wanted to, first of all, say as a former school board member that I never had the opportunity to thank the council for all they do for the school district. Being on the school board, I realized all the intricacies and partnerships and the different ways that the council, the city, has supported our schools, and I really want to take the time to acknowledge that first. And I'm here tonight to add my voice to approval for a Baylands education study. I think it's important that we have a good education plan, especially because it will take a good amount of meetings with the Bayshore School District, with Jefferson Union, Brisbane Elementary. It's going to be a long process that will take a lot of discussion and analysis. We need some good, solid data for that, and we'll need to get going on that as soon as possible after November. So we don't want to be caught unprepared. It's important that we take the time to do it and we do it right. We want to make sure that we're very inclusive and we are sensitive to the needs of the other school districts, and it's important that we are prepared for that conversation. So I hope that you will agendize that for the next meeting or an upcoming meeting, and thank you again for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Karen. Tuvere? Hope I said that right. If not, correct me, please.
My name is Tuvere. I'm a Brisbane resident, and I have 2 young children. I think I'm here also to ask for you to move forward with the study. I actually just learned about the whole school district lines and the fact that my kids might not be able to go to this new school that might be built, and I think a lot of parents have no idea. So if you need to, I think, get the word out. All the parents I've talked to in my son's class had no idea. I was actually, our families actually thought about moving out of Brisbane because of the high school situation. We seriously considered moving a couple years ago. So to learn that there might be a new high school being built is very exciting to us. But the fact that our kids might not be able to go there is very disconcerting. And the fact that all this money that might be brought in with this new development and our kids who live on this side of Brisbane might not benefit from any of it is very disconcerting. So if there can be a change that can be made, we would definitely want it to be made, but we need the study to be done to see if any changes can be made, and if they can, which one would be best, and just to get the information out there. So I also implore you to do this in a timely manner so that, we can get the ball rolling. It's going to take a long time as is, so why not start now? Thanks.
Okay, thank you, too. That's all the slips I have. Does anybody wish to address council on any item not on the agenda? Now is your time. Dr. Roberto, come forward. That's okay, you don't need it.
Thank you for your time. Excellent public education should be the hallmark value of every community. There should be nothing more important than educating our children. We know that if we are going to develop the Baylands, there will be children who need excellent public education. I think a study to say, how can Brisbane as a community provide that is imperative, and there should be no reason not to do it at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto.
Thank you, Roberto.
Okay, anybody else wish to address the council on any item not on the agenda? Come on forward, Dan. That's okay, I don't need to slip. Just tell me what it's about.
It's about education study.
Okay.
For the Baylands. Hi, my name's Dan Carter, a couple-year resident of Brisbane. Wow, I would love to see a benefit come out of the Baylands for education. To me, that's, first of all, any benefit that comes out of the Baylands if we move forward and whatever happens. But education obviously is a huge topic. It's beneficial to all our residents. It was tough when, it's tough for us here when our kids get to the age of going from middle school to high school to make that decision. Where are they going to go? Some people obviously can't afford the option of a private school, so they have to choose between a couple locations, which are good schools. But if there's another option that might come out of this, and I'm not sure that will happen, but a study that could at least look into it, to me sounds like a smart move on my part. So I'd like to see that if it's a possibility.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dan.
Anybody else wish to address the council on any item not on the agenda? Okay, not seeing any takers. Cliff, I'm sure you have a comment on this.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just have a question first for staff. Clay, we've had quite a few people from the community request that the study be considered by the council. Of course, it's not on our agenda tonight, so the council can't really discuss it, but when would be the earliest meeting that we could put it on the agenda for the council to evaluate whether or not to move forward with the study?
Your next regular city council meeting is July 19th.
Okay. And then, Mr. Mayor, as council members, we can reach out to you and as the mayor and say, I'd like to have this item put on the agenda. Last Saturday, I had a meeting with quite a few parents. We met at Matt House, actually, and this was the item that folks wanted to talk about. And, I recommended to them is, if you should have ownership of this. You should come to a council meeting and express how you feel. And they said, okay, I'm going to do that. And I'm really proud to see, so many people show up today. This is an important item, not only just to the folks who showed up today, but for others in our town as well. And I would like to see us put this item on our agenda for July 19th to reevaluate the study.
Okay. Any council comments regarding?
I don't think it's really the time. No.
Yeah. Clay, I know we've talked about this through the years, but as I understand it, the study would be a study on the impacts on the schools, and some people were mentioning about combining, and that is never really part of what the study is, if I understand it. Is that?
Well, what we brought to you last April, so 14 months ago, was a contract with a law firm that was going to look at the legal issues around school district reorganization.
Oh, okay.
And there would be a subcontract with a financial analysis of the financial issues that would be involved in any number of various sorts of scenarios.
Okay.
And keeping in mind that as the council knows, and I think most of the members of the public know, that this is not a City of Brisbane decision. This would have to be a decision that is made by the school districts.
So this basically would be gathering data.
Correct.
That the school districts could use, and we would just be the communication point, I guess, so to speak.
We could be a communication point, we could be a facilitator, but we're not a decision maker.
Right. Okay.
Can I ask that the staff goes ahead and resends to us that report and that proposal so that we have it at the next meeting if it's agendized?
Sure. I mean, do you want, I guess that's kind of a fundamental question. I mean, what is it you're asking to be agendized for July 19th?
Well, I'm not sure I'm asking to be agendized, but you referenced our April meeting where we had a discussion, and perhaps if we have that staff report, that would be good.
That bid might not be the same though, right?
Yeah, this is April of 2017, so it's 14 months ago. And it was on your agenda that night. I can resend that to you if you find that helpful.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, that would be really helpful to me because
okay.
I've never seen it.
Wouldn't we need to get a new one though? I mean, if we're really considering this, the cost would probably be
so
different.
Madison brings up a good point. I don't know that this proposal would be ripe at this point. It's 14 months old. We'd have to contact the law firm and see if they're interested in doing it, what the pricing would be, what the timing would be. I've had no communication with them for 14 months.
Well, and I don't think we should,
well, we could agendize it and then go from there.
Right.
Okay.
I would like to, in terms of agendizing, I'd like to review a proposal on redrawing the Jefferson Union High School district line with respect to where Brisbane fits into that. And then also the Bayshore district. So elementary and then high school. that's what I would be looking for from the study.
Okay.
To look at, potential elementary school for Brisbane students, and that would be in the Brisbane School District, and a high school that would be essentially in a unified, Brisbane School District as well.
Okay, so I would echo the mayor's comments that when we had the proposal to do the analysis, we were not asking them to specifically look at any specific reorganization, but
It's just a price.
we were including all of the Jefferson Union High School District, Bayshore School District, and Brisbane Elementary School District.
Okay.
So we could have a 2x2 meeting, a school 2x2, and since that last study was 14 months ago, and life has changed in Brisbane since that time, maybe it would be wise for us to reevaluate what's in that proposal and give that information to staff, and then staff sees if moving forward with the consultant makes sense.
Yeah, I know that the 2x2 is met with the Brisbane School District. Jefferson Union High School District does not want to meet until after the election. And Bayshore School District, we're having trouble meeting with the superintendent and timing issue, and right now we're scheduled for August, right?
They've indicated an interest in meeting, but we just haven't got it scheduled yet.
Right.
But I mean, we could have a meeting with. It doesn't have to be with the school 2x2. Just the two of us.
With us, but I mean, I don't want to send out things that, we're looking at changing the lines and freaking people out.
I don't think there should be any, intent of trying to find a particular outcome, but rather, what are the various scenarios? And let's just get the information.
Objectives.
Absolutely.
I think probably Nancy Loxamana probably kind of summed it up, an objective study of gathering information. And okay.
Exactly.
All right, we'll agendize that for the 19th then. And
thank you. And thank you for people who came tonight and spoke.
All right, that brings us to anybody else on oral communications? All right, we've kind of moved past it, but all right. It brings us to presentations, item A, which is San Mateo County Home for All. Hello.
Good evening, Mayor Conway, members of the council, Manager Holstein, and Brisbane staff. My name is Peggy Jensen. I'm Deputy County Manager, and I'm very pleased to be here this evening to update your council on our Home for All initiative, specifically talk about our community engagement project. As you all know, Home for All is a county-wide collaborative working to close the jobs housing gap throughout San Mateo County. The project was initiated by the Closing the Jobs Housing Gap Task Force, which adopted a 4-part action plan. The first part of that action plan focused on building community support and building partnerships. A couple of projects that we've undertaken related to this specific action was our community convening on how to talk about housing so people listen, learn, and act, and also our community engagement pilot projects, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. The second component of our action plan is supporting all types of housing development. And to do that, we have a Home for All website, and we've also launched what we call our second unit online center, which will shortly include a How to Build a Second Unit in San Mateo County workbook. The third component of our action plan is funding for affordable housing. And as you all may be aware, the Board of Supervisors has designated or appropriated over $44 million of our Measure K funding for affordable housing throughout San Mateo County. In addition, the staff are focusing on, researching actually, RENA sharing options. It's something that we've held a workshop on and are going to be following up. And the final area that we're working on is securing land and strengthening community infrastructure. We're working with HEART to support school district housing as part of this task, and we also recently had a convening on linking housing and transportation. But what I'd like to focus on tonight is our building partnerships and community support work. This work started back in the summer of 2017 when we asked our consultants, Common Knowledge Plus, to conduct a survey of all 20 cities, both city managers and also a select group of city council members. What we learned from that survey was that the cities felt that they were the only jurisdiction in the county that was taking any action or doing any work around housing. What we knew from talking to everybody was that wasn't the case. But what we also heard from those conversations was that all of the cities, the managers in particular, were very interested in new ways to engage the community around housing. So from that survey, we developed 2 projects. The first is called our Learning Network. We invited cities to attend a bi-monthly meeting starting last August, where they have the opportunity to share information about the work that they're doing in the city, and also have the opportunity to ask each other questions about the work they're doing, and get some consulting direction or some educational components around community engagement from our consultants, Common Knowledge Plus. We have between 6 and 10 cities attend each of these meetings. Brisbane has been very well represented. And we also, we have between 10 and 16 cities that have been attending. Our next meeting is this Thursday if anyone would like to attend. The second step in our community engagement process was a community engagement pilot project. We have launched the project in collaboration with our consultants, and we are in the process of testing a new approach to community engagement. To do that, we issued an RFP to all the cities to see if any city was interested in addressing a housing issue with this new approach. We had 6 proposals from cities, and 4 contracts were awarded. Contracts were awarded to Burlingame, Half Moon Bay, Portola Valley, and Redwood City. So what were the goals of our pilot project? We wanted to create an engagement process through a series of community discussions that brought people together instead of pushing them apart around an issue. We wanted to expand participation at these meetings beyond the people that generally attend civic meetings or generally participate in town council meetings. We also wanted to create meetings that residents and staff and council members all looked forward to attending, meetings that were constructive and congenial, not contentious. And finally, we wanted to conduct a gathering that provided guidance and direction to city staff and council members on what the larger community, what the broader community really wanted to see done about housing. So what is the new model? In the simplest terms, the model is 2 or possibly more community discussions around housing. As you can see from the Burlingame meeting announcement on the left, the meeting was called Talking About Housing Together. Each of these cities' meetings has a specific brand. It's about discussing things together, talking together, coming together as a city to talk about housing as a group. The purpose of the meetings is to bring together a diverse group of city residents to talk with one another. And I want to emphasize that the purpose of the meetings is to have the residents talk with one another about what they value about their hometown. And then building on those common values, the residents talk together about what they can do personally, what the city could do, or what other partners, such as nonprofit organizations, could do to address the housing situation in their communities. The meetings include short presentations by city staff, but the majority of the time is devoted to facilitated table discussions among the residents and then short reports from each of the tables. So for the residents, the meetings are listening, learning, and sharing opportunities. Council members welcome everyone to the meeting, and then they thank them at the close. But as you can see in this picture from the Portola Valley conversation that was held last March, on the very back against that white wall, those are the 5 town council members. The focus is on the round table where the residents are having their discussion. So 3 of our pilot cities have completed their 2 community meetings on housing, and Half Moon Bay has their first meeting scheduled for July 15th and their second one later this summer. We've learned a few things from the pilot study that we've conducted so far, and the first is that it's extremely important to spend time doing community outreach before the meeting is actually held. If you're going to bring new people to the table, you have to reach out to them, and our consultants working with the cities have developed a whole list of good tools and approaches for doing this. The second thing we've learned is that to have really listening and learning meetings, you need to have very good facilitators at each table. And what you can see at the tables here is that there is a facilitator either from our Home for All initiative, from our consultants, Common Knowledge Plus, or from the Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center at each of the tables. And then thirdly, we've learned that post-meeting follow-up is extremely important. After each meeting, there's a written summary that's posted on the city website, and it's shared with everyone who attended the meeting. Those summaries report back to the attendees the common themes that were shared by everyone who attended. For example, the themes that were expressed in some of the themes that were expressed in Burlingame include Burlingame residents are strongly connected and loyal to their community. They want to be able to stay in their community and have their families stay in Burlingame. They'd also like local workers, such as teachers and police and hospital staff and retail staff, to be able to live in town. And they want a walkable, well-connected community with socioeconomic diversity. So how has this approach been received in the towns that that have been pilot projects? Well, I can report that the council members have been very pleased. They've been pleased with how constructive the discussions have been. They've been pleased with people who've been very strident opponents to town policies, have thanked them for hosting the discussions. They felt it's an opportunity to share their opinions and come together as a group. And they've also found that after the discussions, residents, council members, and staff each find it easier to talk about housing issues in their community with one another and among one another. What we've heard from attendees is that they've appreciated the opportunity to talk about why they live in their city, what they value in their community, and the opportunity to share their ideas around housing with other residents. They said they've met new people and listened to new perspectives, and they've learned that they can work together as a community on multiple solutions to the housing challenge. I'd like to close with sharing with you a couple of comments from attendees from a couple of the meetings. The first is a comment from a resident, an attendee in Burlingame, who said, "The conversation around housing solutions needs to continue in Burlingame. There's a decent amount of community consensus on this issue." And in Portola Valley, one of the attendees said, "People are much more interested than I thought in creating a more diverse community in Portola Valley. I am very encouraged." We're very pleased that the cities have agreed to participate and have participated in this pilot project, and we feel that we've had some very good outcomes. What I'm here to offer to you this evening is if your council is interested in any way in having some type of community discussion around housing, our Home for All team and our Common Knowledge Plus consultants would be happy to work with you. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, council questions?
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Peggy, for the presentation. So, I have attended several of the Home for All meetings. I was originally the council's person for the Jobs, Housing, and Balance Task Force that was put on last year. And, recently I attended one of the Home for All meetings. And at that meeting, they showed the different pilot programs in much greater detail. And representatives and council members from each city, was at the Home for All meeting, and they spoke about how they engaged their community, in a really in-depth way. And so I invited Peggy and her staff to come to Brisbane and talk about, maybe there's a possibility that we could tap into their expertise, their ability to have a community workshop in regards to the Baylands. And I've talked with staff, and we have this election coming up, and there's legal issues about when the city can participate and when it can't. And so, Michael, if we were to move forward with a workshop, what's the window of opportunity to do such an event with the community?
Well, if the council decides to take action on July 19th to approve the general plan amendment and place a ballot measure on for November, certainly if the council were interested in having a community workshop concerning housing, probably the sooner the better. I don't necessarily think that this presentation would be considered advocacy with respect to the ballot measure one way or the other, but certainly an argument could be, or at least somebody could at least make the statement that this would seem to be an advocacy position concerning housing generally in the Bay Area, including the Baylands. So my recommendation would be, if the council is interested in doing that, that it would be conducted, within the next month or 6 weeks or so. That would be a better approach than as you approach the election, everything becomes much more political, needless to say.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Peggy, I know these community engagements have focused around housing, and our general plan amendment, calls out for 1,800 to 2,200 housing units. But, at our last council meeting, people came and talked about building community. And housing is, of course, an important component of that, but there's all these other pieces that make up a community. If you were to do this workshop, could it be tailored more towards, how do you build community? I mean, we talked, earlier this evening about the importance of education being part of a healthy community.
It certainly could be done that way. In fact, we've set this up in a set of 2 meetings for the cities that we've worked with. The first meeting really is talking about what are people's goals for their community? What is important to them? What do they want to see? I have a packet that the city clerk will pass out to you that includes some of the reports from the communities that have already had these meetings, also some of the announcements and a press release about the Half Moon Bay presentation. I think this will give you a sense of the type of information that's coming out from the meetings. I can tell you from the table I facilitated in Burlingame and from the summary report, there was a lot of interest around housing. In Portola Valley, there was interest around maintaining a rural type environment, but also having innovative solutions. In Redwood City, there was a lot of focus on equity and providing opportunities for everyone in the community. So it doesn't specifically have to be about housing, it's about what do we value. We used the second meeting to talk about how do those values relate to what are the options for addressing housing in that community.
Okay. And so the city attorney talked about that small window, and I'm sure it took months really to organize, and really understand what are the dynamics of these 4 cities. With the 6-week, you're looking at 6 week, with the 6-week time frame, is it realistic that your team could, get up and running?
Is July 16th?
Yeah, I was thinking 6 weeks from the time that the council put the matter on forward.
Okay.
So you're probably talking about from July 19th, assuming the council takes action, then to the end of August.
Oh, that certainly gives us enough time.
I have a question.
Okay.
Sorry, were you done?
Rita?
Were you done?
Oh, yeah, I'm done.
I didn't want to cut you off.
I think you're talking about Rita, so who's that?
No, I'm sorry. It came out real fast.
Are you done?
Are you done?
I am for now.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and this is a little bit out of the box in terms of what you've been doing, and I don't know if it's possible, but I think for this to really be helpful for us right now, I think it's got to be a lot more specific, and I don't know if that's possible. You could tell me, or Michael could tell me, but when we had our conversations about Parkside, we had really in-depth workshops about a Parkside-specific issue. And right now, and that was super helpful, I think, in guiding the council to make a really informed decision that worked for our community. And I don't think it would have been as helpful if we were just talking about housing in general. And right now, I mean, my priority is really to figure out housing for the Baylands. And so if I think for us, for this to make the most sense, I'd like to see something that's like the community is really giving us feedback about what they want to see specifically at the Baylands. Because if it's just more general, I think it's harder to synthesize and harder to pull out exactly how that translates specifically to that area. Because I think people feel differently about that area because there's a lot going on out there. And so I know that's kind of out of the box from what you've been doing. It's been more general, but I think for us, I mean, we really need something that's a lot more specific. So I don't know if that's possible, and I don't know if that conflicts with what you kind of just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, but that's where I'm at.
Okay.
I'm going to dovetail off that in a completely different direction. So when I think about the potential for additional housing in Brisbane, I think what we're going to see coming up is the infill and the in-law and the smaller units being added to our properties. Accessory dwelling unit stuff. I think that is a more immediate conversation for us. So I would like to see that added to the conversation if we're going to do something like this. That makes sense?
Yeah. All right.
I would just say that our community right now is our housing discussions are so laser focused on that particular area. You know, it could be beneficial to have two. I mean, to have one that's maybe more Bayland centered and then another one that's like tiny home centered, because that's something that our community is really talking about, and accessory dwelling units. And I think that the community would be open. I certainly would be open to having 2 workshops, but I really, because we're on a time crunch getting up to this election, I'd think that like the Baylands is, to me, finding out what the community feels about that in particular with housing is a priority, because secondary dwelling units are always something that we can look at. Tiny homes are always something that we can look at, but right now we really got to make a decision on this. So I'll let somebody else.
If I might add, what happens at these meetings is it's a general conversation. There's a presentation about sort of an introduction to the community, and then there's a general conversation about goals and people's vision for their town. And then what happens is that city staff present an overview of the housing options in the community, what sort of things are available. It could be second units, it could be high-density transportation-oriented development, it could be a variety of different things, whatever is being pursued by the city. And then the table discussion focuses on, well, given what we want to value about our community, which of these solutions are we really interested in? For example, in Portola Valley, the thing that they were most interested in was in second units. So their second meeting was all about second units.
Terry, you have any comment?
I just want to say that, well, I think it's good to get a pulse of the community and where we feel. I really want to be cautious about looking like we're trying to direct something on the Baylands that we may, is going to be down the road, certainly after the election, that any decisions are going to be made. And so for me, I think it's important to, the wording is already going to be on the ballot measure, whatever we decide in our July meeting. And so it's going to be a little too late to really address the Baylands specific plan that may come later once we change our general plan or not change our general plan. And so I think it's trying to step out of the box now to try to look at directing focus on what people want to see in the Baylands, because that may actually split the community more than having this conversation about what may possibly be out there right now when we don't know what the appetite of the community is. So I have concerns about trying to direct this towards the Baylands before we have the vote and before we have a specific plan even on the table.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think actually a lot of these are more like specific plan related discussions.
Yeah, we know UPC is going to have their community outreach. And this is probably the only opportunity that we'll be able to have a community outreach with our citizens. So, to me, I look at this not diving into the details, but still staying up at the 25,000 foot level. Yes, there's going to be, housing is on the general plan amendment, but we also know that we're going to have to deal with transportation. We're going to have to connect with recreation and open space and the arts, and how do all these pieces come together? And to me, as a council member, it would be extremely beneficial to understand where the community is coming from at that higher level, and also to generate some excitement that this isn't just about something we have to do, but this is something that we should want to do. This is going to be our new neighborhood. Okay. And so if we have the workshop at a time when that the city attorney has recommended, to me, I think that safeguards us. I'd rather, have information coming from our citizens rather than somebody else filling the void with the conversation, because that, quite frankly, that's what has happened, up until this time, and it hasn't been in our benefit. So. But I'd love to hear from the members of the public.
Well, I'm not sure if we really want to say this is to have a meeting that would be advocacy for the ballot measure or against the ballot measure. I think that's a very sketchy thing to get into, and this is a presentation, not a public hearing, and so I think that's something that we should table until we can discuss it and go from there.
Yeah, I actually have a couple people who want to speak on this one here. Thank you, Peggy. You may want to sit in the front row because you might have to come up and answer some questions. First slip I have is Nancy Loxamana.
Nancy Loxamana again, Humboldt Road. I did hear all of what you were saying, and I do understand the concern. We don't want to show how people should vote. But I also think of it as an opportunity to have a discussion of what else the Baylands can be. Last week I was reading an article that Santa Clara University has the only ethics center in the country. Who would have thought? Who would think that maybe we could have an environmental center at the Baylands? Maybe Al Gore, who's on the Apple board and on a UC Berkeley region, maybe he wants to have a place to have an environmental center. I mean, wouldn't that be a great idea, next to a dump? I mean, think about it. So I think that an opportunity, I thought of Home for All, even though it does say home in the, it is a San Mateo government-sourced resource. I still think there's an opportunity to have a discussion on what else the Baylands can be. Yes, there will be questions on housing. What I particularly liked in your presentation is the opportunity to have roundtable discussions, not having people get up, myself included, and tell us just your opinion. I think the idea of having people sit at a round table, talk to neighbors they haven't met, and talk about what is their vision for the whole area. Try to keep housing not a central part of the discussion. It will come up. We're not going to stop people, I would think, from expressing their opinions. But I think it would be a great opportunity to think about what else the Baylands can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Karen Lentz.
Again, I have to say that I agree with Councilmember Davis that we should be very focused in our education efforts in that 6-week period is a very short period. I think it's extremely important that we have some sort of community education. This is a huge decision that our electorate has to make, and we need to give them the information that they require to make that decision. I have to say that I also agree with Councilmember O'Connell that we need to make sure that we are not looking like we are being advocates for housing or not, either way on the vote. I think it's important that the community, though, realizes that they will be part of a larger conversation, and maybe that could be part of those education events that we could hold, that there will be workshops, that there will be visioning, that could be part of what happens for us as a community. But we do have to do it in the right time. And I think that we have a focused amount of time, a certain set amount of time, and we need to be very strategic with how we use that period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I don't have any more slips on the presentation, but Roberto, come forward.
Thank you again. You know, housing and development in Brisbane has been a very polarizing issue since I have lived in this town. Since developing the Ridge and now with the Baylands. And it just seems to me that if we can stop this kind of polarization and just listen to each other in civil dialogue, that would be a very, very good thing to helping each other and a lot of healing for this community. And I think if Home for All is willing to facilitate this, we should take it up as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to comment on this? James?
Mayor, council, city staff, I would love for Home for All for it to do this. I think one of the things our community really needs is a safe place to talk about housing and the Baylands. Speaking as a relatively new resident, I attended council meetings for about a year, and I felt very intimidated and scared at times to share my own views on this issue. Because of how heated some people feel about this. I mean, we love our town. We're really passionate about it, and we're really passionate about what's going to happen out on the Baylands and what's going to happen with housing in our community. And what I got most excited can you remind me of your name? Peggy? What I liked most about Peggy Jensen's presentation is that they have a way of including people who don't regularly attend meetings. I think there's a lot of voices in our town that we normally don't hear, and if we have a venue for them to share their voice, I mean, I'm really excited about that. And also that it's expertly facilitated, so that there are experts who are creating a safe, collaborative conversation. I mean, I don't know if you can see it in my body language, but I'm very excited about that. And again, thank you for your time, and Peggy, thank you so much for what you do for our communities here. Thank you.
Dan.
Hello, Dan Carter again. I love what it sounds like Home for All is doing in different towns and stuff. But I'm concerned, like you guys said, that it's going to be hard to separate this from the conversation from the Baylands. So the timing seems a little forced to me, that it looks like then there is an advocacy saying that you want the housing more than you don't, or it's not really a vote of equal opportunity. So talking about the small house versus the Baylands is two hugely different conversations. So I'm not sure if I see that this venue works because of the Baylands being such a heated topic, and we know that we've kind of been put in a corner, and we're making a decision based off of everything that's happened around us, and it kind of looks a little. I don't see how it can look like it's not about that, but that's just my thought on it.
Thanks, Dan. Laurie.
And council members. So I used to attend these Home for All meetings when I was on the council, and I found them to be very informative. And I remember at the time talking to Clay and saying, is there a way that we could participate and be one of these pilot projects? But at the time, we we talked about it and we decided, we weren't ready yet as a community to engage in that. And I think having Home for All give a presentation that would be different than a forum of a Brisbane City Council meeting, I think it would be really beneficial because it would be more about educating the public, sort of like we did with the Parkside workshop, the pop-up workshop. It's just another way to educate people about, what is going to be on the ballot in November. I think it's not a yes or no. This, of course, it's not the city wouldn't be taking a stance. It would be more about just educating the public about the different issues that are relevant to the housing issue at the Baylands. So I think it could be extremely beneficial. The meetings that I've been to for Home for All, it was really helpful to learn how the other cities have dealt with the community outreach, because housing is such a polarizing issue, and it's really important for us to look at how we can engage community members who wouldn't otherwise come to council meetings and get them up to speed on what are the various issues and what they're going to be voting on in November. So I would support having this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Anybody else wish to add their 2 cents to this? Clay, before I bring it back to the council, a little bit of discussion, but I heard from the city attorney, but I haven't heard from you and the staff. You have room on your plate for something else, or?
Well, we just kick something off the plate is what we do. Right? Yeah, I mean, we do have concerns about the time frame, and I've had some conversations with Peggy about that. I think their normal lead time in these things is 3 or 4 months, or if not more, with a lot of the cities. So it's going to be a challenge, but if it's the council's desire, we'll work to make it happen.
Okay, let me bring this back to the council and ask, does the council have an appetite to move forward with some form of looking at a workshop with Home for All?
Excuse me, I have a question for
Sure.
Clay and Michael. And, I also have a concern about, the city taking, or having the perception that the city is taking an advocate role in pushing for a certain outcome for the general plan amendment. But I also understand the need to have community education, to get the folks to come together and be able to, as it was said, be in a safe environment to talk with each other. It is so difficult to have the exchange when all that the people do is just come to the podium and that's it. But when they're sitting around a table amongst themselves, then it becomes more of a community engagement, rather than addressing their issues directly to the council. And so do you think that you could work with Peggy and her staff to design the workshop so that it does not appear that the city is advocating for a certain type of outcome for the election?
Well, I'll just give you what my approach would be, and that would be to sit down with Peggy and her consultants and go through a format and discussion for that day, and have the city attorney involved in that conversation, and working with him to make sure we've got the boundaries set in terms of how the day functions and in the way city staff functions within that day. Just, to be kind of clear here, and the city attorney can amplify this, I mean, you as city council people have every right to advocate for a ballot measure for or against. The real touchy part of this really comes from myself and my staff. That it's not our role to be advocating for or against any ballot measure. And so when we are involved in events like this, we have to be very careful in terms of how that day is set up and how it's presented and how it's communicated. And, I think we can do that. And we'll work with the city attorney to make sure that we meet those boundaries. but it's really an issue where the city organization cannot advocate, and it's really kind of incumbent upon me and my staff that we're not perceived as advocating for or against the ballot measure.
Okay, but so then council members can.
Well, probably not that day.
Yeah, but
that day you wouldn't do it, but
sure.
When
no, I mean, and as Peggy demonstrated in her slides, I mean, the council really takes a step back. Right, this is about the community, not the council, trying to enforce its will. All right, so just to be clear, you feel that you could work with Peggy and her staff to create the boundaries that you all would be comfortable with.
Well, I sure hope so.
I mean, sure, if you couldn't...
We'll work hard to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you couldn't, then it just wouldn't happen.
Well, I mean, I think we would design it in a manner in which we feel that it's impartial. How others see it is always, the challenge.
Sure, such as everything that comes before us.
It's true.
So my concern with this is that the proposed ballot measure, and we don't have one yet. We haven't voted on putting it on the ballot measure.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of these issues are what are visioning for a specific plan, which is down the road after a general plan amendment. And so my concern is that we're trying to do this before we make a general plan amendment, giving people the impression that this is something that we're looking at what's going to be in a specific plan. And we don't know what's in that specific plan. So I just foresee problems with it at that level. Staff can try to make it as generic as possible, and we can try to make it as quick as possible and say it's not in relation to the general plan amendment. But because we're having this discussion and the way we're having the discussion, it sounds like it is. And that would be my perception, that it is about the general plan and what we're looking to do immediately on the Baylands.
So let me ask you this. So, I mean, and Peggy, you can jump in if I'm incorrect here, but I don't think that Home for All, when they were working with these four cities, really dove into the weeds about specifics. I think what they did was they looked in what are your goals, what are your values? And so for me, it's about providing an opportunity for the community to talk amongst themselves, right? We don't have that in place. To me, I think that's important. We have the most important decision that this community...
You don't need to try to sell me on it, because I don't think we're making a decision tonight. And if they want to, if we want, it's a presentation, it's not an action item.
So,
I had a question.
Well, how about if we do this? If we go ahead and agendize it for the 19th to have a discussion, and then we can decide there whether the council moves forward. Okay.
I'm still uncomfortable just leaving it in the realm of the Baylands, because that doesn't feel right to me at all. I think if we're going to have a discussion about Home for All, it needs to encompass Home for All throughout Brisbane. So
I get it.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Putting this in the Baylands realm, for me, I'm extremely uncomfortable with, and I wouldn't go along with it. So
well, that's also Cliff's argument, is that this is for people to, have the conversations pretty much about the Baylands, regarding their opinions on that. I think we should get into this, on the 19th. I did have a question for staff. Would you feel uncomfortable with all five of us being in attendance at an event like that? Because, it seems like other council members have all been in attendance at these other meetings, but it's a little bit sensitive considering what we're going through right now. So I don't know if staff wants to handle that, if you would feel comfortable about all of us being there for that type of discussion. Even if we're not participating, it's essentially we would have a quorum, so...
I'm nervous anytime all 5 of you get together anyway. I don't think in this particular setting it would be much of a problem
Okay.
as it's been structured.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we agendize it for the 19th, and then Clay, maybe you have some conversations with your staff, with Peggy, and then you can kind of develop a staff report that can help guide our discussion, and the council can decide at that point whether we want to go forward with having the workshop within that 6-week time frame or later. I think it would be useful, but I'm hearing the concerns, also, and also it would really have to be objective. I don't think it could be focused or subjective. So organic.
We'd be happy to work with staff on a staff report that outlines more detail. I think it will also be helpful for you all to learn more from the handouts that we will be provided.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Peggy.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can just ask Councilmember Cunningham, are you thinking more of, looking at our city as a whole in regards to a workshop? The entire city? Because
no, the housing for all.
Okay.
Not the entire city, but the housing for all. I think, if we stop focusing in on the Baylands, my feelers get bent out of shape. So
I think it has to be organic.
Definitely.
Objective.
Yeah.
So, that's probably the direction. Okay, so we do have another presentation, Vasani food truck presentation. Saba, come on up. Hello.
Hello. Hello. Good evening, council members, city staff, and thank you for the opportunity to present Vasani European Food Trailer. This food trailer, pretty much when people said food trailer, coming up at your mind, dirty, nasty food trailer. Vasani food trailer is highly equipped with commercial kitchen equipment, trailer, brand new, and we would like to have this food trailer on the Christmas tree lot, because anyway this lot sitting available most of the time during the year, and on the daily busy schedule that pretty much all of us have on the daily basis. I believe this service it will benefit the residents of Brisbane and all the people that crossing our town to get a hot, nice and healthy food right of the kitchen. So we understand that there is a couple. On the picture that you see that I see on the wall, you can see a couple pictures from outside of the trailer. You can see 2 pictures of inside. Inside, like I said, the trailer is high-end equipped. Everything is stainless steel. The top brands has been chosen to equip this trailer. And our goal is actually to provide to the residents of Brisbane healthy food. We're planning to be there 7 days a week from 8 to 10 p.m. Also to provide a fresh breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the food that we're gonna provide, it's not typically food that usually people getting from the food truck. Our menu is not ready. We're still working on the menu, but we're planning to have a lamb chops, ribs, crepes, savory and sweet, hot dogs, European style hot dogs. I'm not sure why they're not so popular here on the West Coast, but they're very famous on the East Coast, and stuff like that. So usually, we do have in our town, I'm a resident of Brisbane for more than 10 years. We have in our town Mexican restaurant, Asian restaurant, Vietnamese restaurant, but there is no any European food. So I think this will benefit our town, and most likely this place sitting like that available all year. Actually, I come back from Lake Tahoe last night to attend the meeting tonight and come back late at night. There was a 2 tractor trailers, 53-foot parked there. And last week when we go there to take these pictures, just to see how the trailer is going to look there on this spot, honestly, it smells kind of bad there, like a toilet. So we would like to clean this place, to keep it nice, to keep it, when people crossing our town, to see that something nice is sitting right in front of the town. That's pretty much our goal. We also understand that there was a concern about the safety and the traffic, and I believe safety is first. I believe there is a way this right turn to be regulated with more signs, or definitely there is a way how to keep the traffic to be safe there. Once people come from Bayshore touring south, to cut this right turn if they want to stop and get some food. That's pretty much all, Lori. This is the place, exactly the place that I'm talking about, the right turn if people coming up from Bayshore. So that's pretty much all that I would like to say.
Do you want to speak to the month of December?
Thank you, Sava. Hold on a second, Madison,
okay.
if you could. Yeah, thank you, Sava, for your presentation and council questions. So it looks like you have a question.
Oh, yeah, before he finished, I wanted to, we had met in the Economic Development Subcommittee, and I think a really important part of this presentation is to address the what happens in December when the Lions Club have their tree lot. And so we had kind of discussed that, so I think it might be good for you to mention that before we finish.
Actually, there is a stop line there. It's a stop line there. There is a bus stop there, and the bus make this right turn on a daily basis. During the time that you guys have this Christmas tree event, I believe also there is a people that make this right turn. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to disturb the regulations and on the city, and would like to keep everything safety. Like I said, safety first, but I believe it's doable with additional signs, or somehow this right turn to be regulated,
Right.
just to prevent any accidents.
But we had also talked about potentially maybe taking the month of December off, or moving the trailer so that it could accommodate the Christmas trees, right?
Well, yeah, we're very flexible. If this is, during the time when the Christmas tree will be there, if it's not possible for both of us to be there, we can take out the trailer, and after they finish their event, we can get back, or we can work together. Depends. We're pretty flexible there.
Other council questions? Anybody?
Looks
like this came from the Economic Development Subcommittee?
It did. So, so Sava was in town. I met Sava during, campaigning. He, also plays soccer, at Littman Field, and he was, he donated some of the soccer goals that you see at the field. So he's been, active. I invited Noreen Leaks, our Park and Rec manager, to look at the trailer so that she could get an understanding of what Sava's operation was. And then we did have the economic development meeting to to discuss it further. There was an issue that came up from the city engineer in regards to making a right turn onto Bayshore or from Bayshore into the lot. And so I had sent an email, and I apologize if my emails got buried and I didn't see a response. But kind of looking at, say, you couldn't make a right turn into the parking lot from Bayshore. That we had no entry at the curb cut, and that traffic would come in through the Old County entryway. I know that's probably not the best for you, Sava, but to me it was an issue that was brought up, and I think that we need to come up with a way that makes the site safe, but also provides opportunity to have a food truck in town that provides real benefit for the community.
Can I add one more thing from the subcommittee? I think we did get an email from staff stating that at this time we're not prepared to get into a discussion about safety per se, but tonight is more about just like gauging if the rest of the council has an interest, and if so, staff can come back with maybe some solutions or some suggestions regarding traffic in that area, right?
Well, I'd like staff to, certainly they can't make a decision because this was a presentation, right? So,
yeah, it's not on your agenda for a decision tonight. As you know, this was city property, so there would be real property negotiations. So we would bring it back to you at that time, and then some issues that the city attorney, I think, has advised you of would be discussed with the council.
For a closed session?
Closed session, yes.
Okay. All right. I think it's a worthwhile discussion in closed session. So. Okay. Thank you, Sava.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sava.
Yeah, come on.
I feel like I'm annoying you now.
Never.
Thank you. As far as the Lions Club, I want to mention that first of all. Yeah, Dan Carter again, that guy. We set up, our fence comes out the weekend before Thanksgiving, and then our trees are delivered the Friday after Thanksgiving, or the Saturday after. So just so you know when we're running from. And then they usually don't pick up our fence and our restroom till after Christmas, just so to know when that's going to be there. There's a lot of great food trucks now that are going out to our marina location, which are fantastic, and I know our company's using them all the time, which is really nice. My concern with this is, first of all, I love it that it's someone in town coming. I mean, that's always a cool thing. Obviously, we always want to look at how it's affecting our own businesses in town and the lunch crowd and all that. And we always want to support those businesses, which seem to do well. The lunch hour is what supports them. And then also, if we're going to have that food truck, how about the next food truck that asks? Because it seems like the next step to me. So anyhow, I'm not against it. I mean, I love having the food trucks. It's nice to have some other options. And I know you guys are going to consider all that, but anyhow, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else wish to comment on the food presentation? Food truck, okay. So thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to consent calendar. Does anybody wish to remove any items?
I make a motion to adopt items A through F.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. That was fast.
That was.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
All right, thanks.
Let's take a 5-minute break then.